Hear the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to John. Jesus said to the Pharisees, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd, and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. This is the gospel of the Lord. So please be seated. When this was written, a lot of people have actually seen a shepherd. Or at least had some idea what shepherds were like in real life. One of the earliest pictures of Jesus actually known in history is a picture from one of the underground secret meeting places where the early church used to meet. And it's a picture of a man carrying a sheep. And the man is dressed in a short Roman tunic, so it'd be a kind of knee-length tunic with a belt around the waist. And he's got the sheep on his shoulders, he's sort of holding it like this. And he's clean-shaven and he's got short hair. And that's the earliest picture of Jesus we have. And that's how, if you like, the early church imagined him. Like a young man, clean-shaven, short hair, short tunic, carrying a sheep. Or it could be that was just how they thought of a shepherd. If you think of a shepherd now, though, if you go down to Mark at Raglan or something, you're more likely to see them dressed in wellies and overalls with, I don't know, with some kind of boiler suit on or something like that. But then there's that statue down in Abergavenny. You've seen that down by the market, down by the little sort of market square place. And it's a bloke dressed in a jacket and trousers with his wellies and his cap, and he's got a sack over his shoulders, and he's got a couple of sheep by him. And that's kind of how he was in the 20th century, in the middle in the 50s or 40s or whatever. But my experience of shepherds is they're a pretty practical bunch. And I think sometimes this good shepherd image is kind of a bit coloured by our picture from the 19th century images of Jesus, where they show this kind of pretty face with his bright blue eyes and blonde hair and pink cheeks and a red mouth, is kind of floating along in nice clean robes, holding his little fluffy lambs. And it's not really like a real shepherd, because they kind of deal with the reality of sheep. And a friend of mine who couldn't stand sheep is like a contract farmer. He used to do contracts with different farms. He said when sheep are born, he says they're trying to find a way to die. He says they've got 160 diseases and the first symptom is death. He had no respect for them whatsoever. Couldn't stand them. So it's not particularly complimentary that the Lord regards us as his sheep. If you paraphrase that, when we're born, we're looking for a way to die, and we've got 160 diseases, and the first symptom is death. And he's taken it upon himself to take care of us. If you like, we, the mindlessly stupid, self-destructive beings on the earth, and yet he cares for us. And that's who he is. And so, Jesus describes himself emphatically here as the good shepherd. The word that he uses here might be translated as noble, or the model, or the ideal shepherd. The noble shepherd, the true shepherd, the absolute shepherd, the real one, not the imitation one, not the half-hearted one, but the one who really does it properly. And he compares himself with someone that doesn't actually own the sheep. He draws a contrast. He says the hired hand doesn't actually own them. He's not actually that interested in them. He's just doing it for the money. So when trouble comes, when it gets too difficult, he's just going to bail out. Because when it comes to it, the sheep aren't his, and he's not actually that bothered about them. But Jesus says, these are my sheep. I am bothered about them. I care about my sheep, and I'm going to do right by them. And this is what I'm going to do. He says, I am going to lay down my life for my sheep. For these mindlessly stupid, self-destructive creatures, he says, I will lay down my life. He lays down his life for us. He says it lays it down of his own free will. He has chosen to do this. And it's part of the love of the Father. The love that he has with the Father and the Father has with him is expressed to us, that he lays down his life for us. And that's because he knows us. He cares for us. He knows of what we're made. He knows where we've come from. And he knows that unless he does something for us, he knows where we're going. And because he doesn't want us to go there, he lays down his life for us so we can go to a better place. So that we can become members, as he says, of his flock. When he says he's got other sheep from another fold, I think he's talking about nations. When he's talking to these people at that time, he's talking to the Israelites. He's like saying, you are sheep in one sheepfold, and some of you are mine. Some of you are going to hear my voice and follow me, and I'm going to call you, and you'll be with me. But then he says, but I've got other sheep from other places, and they're also going to come. So there in the gospel, he's already saying to the Israelites, you won't be the only ones. People from other places in the world are also going to join this one flock. And of course he says, there is one shepherd, one flock. There's only one group of people that follow him. And that doesn't mean a particular denomination or a particular race or a particular nation or anything like that. It means the people who hear his voice. They are his sheep. One of the Psalms, which is often read for morning prayer, which we didn't say this morning, actually emphasises that point. It says, we're the people of his pasture, the flock of his hand. And then it says, today, if you hear his voice. And then it says, do not harden your hearts. It's really important, those three lines. They're kind of side by side. It's like saying, if we hear his voice, then we are the people of his pasture and the flock of his hand. It's also saying, if we hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Because if you harden your heart, you might wander off, out of that one flock. If you harden your heart, you might not be in that flock. So it's important not to. And John, in this reading here, he's kind of referring to that kind of thing. He says about the heart. He says, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have boldness before God. How would our hearts not condemn us? How would we have that boldness? It's because we've heard his voice and we've heeded it. We've listened to it. We've acted upon it. We've heard the promptings of the heart spoken to our heart by his voice. And he says there are these two commandments which are kind of the same thing in a way. They're closely bound together. That we believe in the Son of God, the Good Shepherd, and that we love one another as he has loved us. Jesus said he lays down his life for his sheep. And so John says we should lay down our lives for one another. It's quite a big ask, really, isn't it? But it's like saying, well, if he can do it, maybe he'll help us to do it. Of course, he's not expecting us to be saviours. He's not expecting us to be him. But he is asking us to be like him, to imitate him. And one of the profound differences, I hope, in the congregation and outside, is that in the congregation we actually care for each other. Sometimes when I'm contacted by the undertaker and, there's been someone passing away, and then you go around and you meet them, and sometimes these people are completely alone because they've lived with their husband or wife and they haven't talked to anyone else. I remember vividly one woman, she contacted me, her husband had died, and she didn't know anyone because she was estranged from her family and because she hadn't actually spoken to her neighbours. It was just the two of them, their little life together. And then I thought of the congregation in here, in Brynmawr and in Gilwyn, and I thought, well, if any one of you were in that position, you know there's a community around you, don't you? You know there are people here that care for you. I know that you don't all, you're not all over each other all the time. I know you're not in and out of each other's pockets all the time, all this kind of thing. But if push comes to shove, I'm sure you know there are people here that care for you. You're not alone. You're part of this community, this flock, if you like. And therefore you know that if it really came to it, there might be someone here that would actually give a little bit of help if you needed it. And I know there are kind and good people here. And this is, if you like, the sign that we're being like him. I'm trying to emphasise this because I don't want this to be a kind of intolerable burden. You think, oh my God, I can't do that. But also to think, well, there's something good about that. There's something meaningful about that. There's something blessed about that. Something noble and beautiful about that. Something worthwhile about it. It's not the kind of thing that's going to get us rich or famous, and it's not necessarily the kind of thing that's going to earn us praise or fame or anything like that. But it's the kind of thing the Lord smiles on. The kind of thing the Lord loves. And he will notice, even if no one else does. And in a way that's a good thing, because if anyone else notices, it kind of confuses us about who we're doing it for. If you end up doing it for the praise of your neighbours or the praise of your family, you think, oh, I'm doing it for the praise of them. You might forget that it's actually the Lord that really matters. Whereas if no one else even notices, you can think, well, I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for the Lord. He's the one that's going to remember. He's the one that's going to bless this. And he's the one that's going to smile on this. Even if no one else notices, he will be happy. The good shepherd is going to look on this and think, that's my boy, that's my girl. That's truly one of my people. And I really think that's how he wants us to live. All who obey his commandments, he says, abide in him, and he abides in them. I think he's talking, if you like, about the way of living. He's saying, by hearing that voice, by believing in him, by being kind, by being merciful, by being gentle and gracious, by helping when help is useful, if you like, we're resting in his presence. And he doesn't want us to be confused that somehow by being mean or vicious, somehow is part of that. He doesn't want us to be confused that somehow not believing somehow doesn't matter. And one thing that people get confused about now is that they say, well, Jesus can't be the only way to heaven. There must be other ways to heaven. Well, it doesn't say that here. It says there is salvation in no one else. For there is no other name under heaven. Our Creator has made us a way. He's shown us this way. He has shown us his Son, this Good Shepherd, who will be our shepherd, who will care for us. Because no one else will care for us in the same way. No one else will lay down their lives for us in that way. No one else can show us the way to heaven. And now that name is known all over the world. It is truly known everywhere. And I know sometimes people criticise the church or criticise Christians as, oh, well, I believe in Jesus if it wasn't for the mean-spirited people sometimes that seem to be associated with him. But every time someone says that, you can think, well, What about the other ones that are good? There are also really good people associated with him. People that are kind and good, people that are noble, people courageous and truthful. Remember them. Remember the good examples. Remember the truly wonderful examples. And so, to finish off, everyone knows this song, "The Lord's My Shepherd." It's very well known. And many people know this psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want." But as we hear that in the future, as you remember these words, think, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, has become our shepherd. When, like David, we say, "The Lord is my shepherd," we're not just speaking poetry or wishful thinking. We're talking about the Son of God, who is the Good Shepherd. He is the one that makes us lie down in green pastures, who leads us beside the still waters. He shows us the way through the barren places of life to find the good things. He's the one that will show us the right path through life. The path, the way that leads to heaven. The path that leads to the house of the Lord forever. He is the one who will anoint us with his Spirit. He is the one that gives us the living water to drink. He gives us the heavenly manna to eat. He's the one that leads us through the valley of the shadow of death. Because all of us will have to go that way one day. All of us at some time will feel afraid. And Jesus has been there before us. He has gone that way before us, so that when we go that way, we know that he knows it. And we can trust him to lead us faithfully all the way through and out the other side. He is the one that spread a table before us in the presence of our enemies, in the presence of those who trouble us. He is the one that promises us that his goodness and his mercy will follow us all the way through our life. That we need fear no evil, that he is with us. For he is our good shepherd, and he will never abandon his sheep. He will never abandon his flock. He will never give up on anyone who hears his voice. So do not harden your hearts. Hear his voice. Believe and trust in this good shepherd who has laid down his life for us, his sheep. Because he is the one who loves us, truly. There is no other name which will bring us home. Amen. We're just going to listen now to the tune of "The Lord's My Shepherd" and just think about these things.